My parents kicked me out at 18. Now they're homeless and expect me to take them in. But I'm not their backup. My parents kicked me out of their home at 18. Now they are begging to move in with me after they lost theirs in a lawsuit. I laughed at their faces and closed the door. I'm 29 male and never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. My parents showed up at my house last week, broke and desperate. They wanted to move in with me after losing their home in a lawsuit. I laughed right in their faces and slammed the door. It wasn't just the satisfaction of saying no to people who had tossed me out at 18 without a second thought. It was the years of resentment that built up brick by brick after they turned their backs on me when I needed them the most. Let me back up a bit. When I was 18, my parents, who had always been a bit controlling, decided they were done with me. Graduation had barely passed when they sat me down for what I thought was going to be a talk about my future. Instead, my dad leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said, "You're an adult now. Time to figure things out on your own." I stared at him, not really understanding what he meant. "What are you saying?" My mom, always the more calculating one, chimed in. "We've given you everything for 18 years. Now it's time for you to stand on your own. We think it's best for you to move out." Just like that. No warning. No discussion. I was being kicked out. They weren't abusive, but they sure as hell weren't loving either. Everything was transactional with them. My dad always complained about how much I cost, and my mom treated me like an obligation more than anything else. But I don't have a job lined up yet. I just graduated, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. How am I supposed to pay for college or rent? "That's your problem now," my dad said, shrugging like it wasn't a big deal. "You'll figure it out. It's called responsibility." I didn't know what to say. It felt like a sucker punch. I thought parents were supposed to help their kids, especially when they were starting out. But for mine, I was just a leech they couldn't wait to get rid of. They gave me a month to pack up and leave, and that was that. I spent that month scrambling. I worked at a grocery store part-time, but there was no way that was enough to pay for rent. I applied for loans, picked up extra shifts, and started cutting corners wherever I could. I found a tiny, rundown studio apartment across town. Barely affordable, but it was better than being homeless. And let me tell you, those years were rough. I juggled school and work, lived off ramen, and tried to stay afloat. They didn't call, they didn't care. I had to figure everything out on my own, and I did. I made it through college barely, but I made it. I got a decent job in tech, saved up for a few years, and eventually bought my own place. A modest house, but it was mine. And the best part? I did it without their help. Fast forward to a few months ago, and I get this call from my aunt. She's one of the few family members I still talk to. She tells me my parents have lost their house in some lawsuit. Apparently, my dad got involved in some shady business deal, thinking he could make a quick buck. It backfired. Hard. They were sued for everything and lost. The house, the cars, the savings. Gone. Are you going to help them? My aunt asked, hesitantly, like she already knew what my answer would be. I laughed because the idea of me helping them was ridiculous. Help them? After what they did to me? "They're still your parents," she said, her voice wavering a little. "Yeah, and they didn't give a damn about me when I was struggling. They made their bed. Let them lie in it." I hung up after that, thinking that was the end of it. But then, last week, they showed up on my doorstep. It was a Saturday morning. I just finished making breakfast, feeling pretty good about life. When I heard a knock at the door, I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised to see my parents standing there. My dad looked exhausted, bags under his eyes, and my mom, who had always prided herself on looking put together, looked like she hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," my dad said, his voice strained. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "About what?" "We lost the house," my mom blurted out, as if I didn't already know. "Yeah, I heard," I said, keeping my voice as casual as I could. "So?" My dad glanced at my mom before continuing. "We don't have anywhere to go. We've been staying with friends, but we need somewhere more permanent." I waited because I knew what was coming next. "We thought, maybe we could stay here with you, just until we get back on our feet," my mom added, her voice thin like she was choking on the words. And that's when I laughed. A deep, bitter laugh that came from years of holding back. "You gotta be kidding me." My dad's face tightened. He wasn't used to being the one asking for help, and it was killing him. "We're your parents, we raised you. You owe us." I raised an eyebrow.